Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I'm here with an amazing colleague that I found online. He found me too in the geek therapy spaces. I actually wanted to highlight how diverse in competencies and experiences geek therapists can be. And so every now and then I'll bring a colleague on to interview and chat about a certain topic. Today we have Dr. Fled. We're going to talk about OCD. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Um, Full name is Jon Fledzinskas. Thank you for saying Fled because yeah, the letter's a mouthful. I'm a clinical psychologist. I mainly work with neurodivergent gamers. I do therapy and assessment. I'd say like 95% of what I do is therapy. I have a little office in Westlake Village, probably like 60-40 split with virtual in person.
Nice.
And I play video games pretty much every day of my life. And I think I have since I was like maybe like 7.
Hmm.
And I like anime and a bunch of other nerdy stuff too. So my practice is like I'm a psychologist, but I'm also just Jon. So, and you can call me Jon if you want to. Jon is like
Okay.
that's preferred.
Thanks, John. So I got excited about all the things that you listed because it just sounded so matter-of-factly. This is me. This is what I do, this is what I like.
It's easy that way, right? Because I don't have to be like, okay, so like, what's the mask? What do I portray here? It's like,
Mm-mm.
no, I'm just Jon. I am a geeky gamer nerd, and those are my clients. And I work with a lot of PDAers, autistic PDAers. So that's been like, with the school system and even adjusting after COVID, that's been like a huge need I've seen just
Mm,
like virtually in person.
darn.
But we're going to talk about OCD,
I
right?
know the thing is like I always jump with ideas with you because you have so many good tangents.
I'm sorry.
Don't apologize. No, I love it. It's like playful. It's fun. I love ideas. Okay, so um OCD. Wait, hold on. Wait, no, go back. So you mentioned that you're playing games. I just wanted to tell people on the YouTube, I'm we're Discord friends, and so I'm always like seeing what are you playing right now? You're always playing something.
Yeah, and I forgot actually you reminded me I had that on. Like I love that too because it makes me think of like I don't know if you used MSN back in the day, the
Yeah.
messenger.
Yeah.
You could like have your now playing music up and like it's cool because it's like it's self-expression. Like you're not playing the game with me, but if you see the game and you know the game, you can either look it up or if you've played it, like you can imagine what my experience is, you know.
Hmm.
If
Hmm.
you've ever played any of the games I'm playing, just DM me and just be like, hey, like I like that game.
Okay, so side note, if you ever want to just stream your playing, I love watching.
I need to do that. I actually want to start a stream. If I don't take on new clients within the next few months, I'm hiring someone right now for therapy. So if I can just defer work and just be like, let me help you, but also have more free time, I'll
Yeah,
probably try to stream. You mean like stream through? I need to learn how to set up a Twitch stream. I've
I
tried
can
that
help you.
before.
I'll show you.
Okay, thank you. Because other than that, I just do like a Discord, like
Yeah,
one
either
button.
way works. Yeah, so I'm gonna push you to have an open slot of time to stream. It's just more fun that way. You won't be, you know, I know other people are like, man, I wish I had more clients. I want to, no, you gotta like enjoy this life, stream, have fun, you play your games. The clients will come.
Just get ready to hear me upset sometimes. The language is usually PG, but I can get frustrated
Oh.
because I play competitive. If I'm playing a single player game, like there's no stress.
Oh, that's what I wanted to know too. Like you're a competitive player, you know?
Yes,
Yes. I think other people would
yes,
love to hear that. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, well I will stream. I will stream.
Yee.
I'll DM you when I'm streaming, unless I think it just announces it, right? It might just
It's helpful to, I'll tell you about it, marketing and branding stuff, like social media stuff. La, OCD. We're gonna talk about OCD today. I'll talk about that stuff with you later. So I asked on my Facebook some questions for generally related to OCD. People gave me great responses. I'm just going to read them one by one. We're gonna respond, talk about a little bit, and again, this is for educational purposes. People are here on my channel, super intelligent, very curious people. I know you can take this information and research it on your own, take it with a grain of salt, and be open to seeking additional perspectives. This is just one of many. So, first question, let me put my glasses on now. Can't see. Um,
join me in the glasses
I
group.
am part of it now. Okay. First question is there a neurophysio neurophysiology behind being OCD, or is it all cognitive from external conditions?
It's an interesting question because from the get-go in the neurodiversity movement, right, OCD is known as a neurotype, which is a naturally occurring brain type that's deviating from the neuronorm,
Hmm.
neurotypical.
Yeah.
So by that philosophy, absolutely, it's neurophysiology, right? It's neurophysiological differences. Um, I am not an expert on neurophysiology at a structural level in terms of like what are the differences look like in terms of, neuronal activation or
Hmm.
different areas of the cortex. Um, but that also, I don't even think that exists at a brain scan level yet. No one can tell me if a brain is, for instance, autistic by scanning it compared to a neurotypical brain.
Hmm.
Which thank goodness, by the way, because that could border on eugenics and people could be like, oh, this is what the brain looks like. We must change that to make it normal. So the answer I think is yes at a philosophical level and a current like paradigm social justice level of like it's a neurotype, not a
Hmm.
disorder.
I want to comment on that. So, do you know Matt Lowry?
I don't know Matt Lowry personally. I think you mentioned Matt Lowry when we met.
Yeah, he has this the autism spectrum thing, the diagram.
Oh
Um,
yeah, 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 yeah.
and so there was this brain scan. So it wasn't his, someone else's. And their take on it was they wanted to do eugenics. That's why Matt never cited them. He's like, this is not the reason why I'm sharing. I'm sharing because there's some possible indications for what extra neural firing could look like in an autistic brain. But all autistic brains are so different, you wouldn't really know, right? But there is correlation, I think. I gotta find it with extra white matter. So if an extra white matter, it's like overfiring, everything's hyper connected. So it's
Yeah.
mismatching with the stimulation. But we don't know what that would look like for everyone. And there's no, here's the blueprint. This is what you got, you can't tell.
Well, for OCD too, like it's a minor tangent, but OCD, I like to talk about OCD as your brain is doing what it's designed to do. It's just doing it a lot to the point where it's causing you distress because everyone learns by linking things. So,
Hmm.
your name is Booney and the sound Booney means you. So, it gets your attention, it's you as a person, concept, ego, whatever it is, how you identify, right? And so, if the sound Booney is you, you've linked those two things as a learning process. OCD is linking things, but to a level where there's usually anxiety,
Oh my
right?
gosh. Okay.
And then a need to compulsively do something if there's the checking, right? If you're compulsively checking, it's I linked this thought to extreme fear and worry, to a need for control, to then a habit or ritual or routine to reduce that anxiety. Because I've also linked the idea that if I do that thing, it will cause the anxiety or thought to go away. So it's just linking. So your brain's doing what it's designed to, it's just doing it too much.
I just grieved my childhood. Oh, so I wanted to
Good,
share.
good grieving, good grieving.
Kind of, I'm laughing. So like I've been laughing a lot about my past lately. So I love that I can disclose more as a coach. Anyway, so I was thinking about OCD and asking you because you know how I think I share like I counted a lot as a kid. Like I would count in sets of 10 all the time. And it was just so obsessive and like the stacking of books and taking them away and putting them in the shelf, cleaning the shelf, taking them out, putting them in order again. And it's like I would do that with my socks, my clothes, my t-shirts, my books. And it was constant cleaning too. And then I noticed like it was just normal. I had so much anxiety as a kid. I'm like, where is this coming from? So like I know there's no real like what's the reason, but that part of my life was like, I don't know if anyone will ever see that as like because sometimes people see like that kid's so clean, we're gonna keep that behavior. We like clean children, like she just wants to clean all the time, organize. Wow.
Right. The behavior wasn't judged, it was applauded and
Yeah.
reinforced.
So that's part of the reinforcement too. Like, oh, my anxiety is being reinforced because I'm being a good kid now.
Yes. I was just telling you, I don't keep my place very organized. And like, if I had that, part of me would be like, good, good, good. And then another part of me would be like, I don't, like the compulsion side would be like, I'm distressed by doing it. I don't want to do it. And ultimately, it's a desire for control, right? It's control over
Mm-hmm.
anxiety and control over thinking.
Yeah. Oh, my heart hurts so much for people who struggle with this. Like there is this turmoil. Like you have a brief snippet of like peace. It's like, oh, it's done. And then you like start panicking or having like these itchy fingers or something about like wanting to do more. It's like, when's it coming back? You know, like it never goes away. Um, yeah.
I'll do some self-disclosure when we get to later questions about pure OCD.
Okay. Okay. Love it. Thank you. Whenever you're comfortable with that, I'm gonna move on to the next question. This is a okay, I wanted to also comment. I got questions from just everyday people, but also got comments from therapists. That's what I wanted to say. Like it's a mix, okay? So this
Mhm.
question's from a therapist. I'd love to know more about how treatment differs for OCD coinciding with PTSD, depending on if the individual is autistic or neurotypical. How would best practice differ for each?
Okay. You can work backwards from the autism versus allistic or non-autistic or neurotypical, whatever language you want to use there, framework. So
Hmm.
a person who's autistic would process possibly like interoception differently. So if trauma
Yes.
is based on like body signals or cues or even labeling emotions, right? Because sometimes autistic folks can struggle to give words to emotions.
Yes.
So then you'd want to work with the body first. Like that would probably change how you're approaching either trauma or OCD and both could be somewhat related in terms of how you're supporting the person, right? For trauma based treatments like EMDR, I don't do EMDR. I don't know how to do EMDR. Actually, I know how people do EMDR, but I've never
Yeah.
done it. I have a colleague who basically just does it, and she's autistic and works with autistic folks, and she's like an expert consultant for autistically informed EMDR. So,
Love it. Love it.
Skylar, I wish you were here talking about this, but I don't, I won't try to do what you do. I won't try to say what you do in hopes that I don't mess it up. But I know that she's mentioned, the sensory aspects. Um, Also the idea like you must sit still sometimes while doing things, like there's no movement
Ah,
incorporated.
yeah.
I think there needs to be a lot of like creativity and adjustment for autistic folks for trauma therapy, right? And then for OCD, um, could be similar. It really you just mentioned that every autistic brain is different. So saying that every autistically informed therapy for
Good point.
OCD
Hmm.
would look the same,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
silly, right? It doesn't make sense.
Hmm.
I do think the hyperconnectivity you mentioned would be something to think about. So
Mm.
being overwhelmed by diving into intrusive thinking more easily, possibly, than a neurotypical person, or wanting to know. Oftentimes, I see autistic clients really want to know what's the utility to this? Why are we doing this? So, if you wanted to do like, let's
Yes.
say,
Yes.
an exposure therapy, which could be really dangerous with an autistic person if you don't explain why. And it could also be harmful if the exposure involves sensory input that they're really sensitive to, right? Um, Internal exposure much different than external exposure, but really paying attention to sensory needs and the sense a client makes out of what is the purpose of what you're doing, I think are two major things to look at when doing any OCD or trauma-based therapy.
I'm bouncing to so many different tangents. Like you give me good stuff. Okay, so one thing is you said the sensory stuff, right? I think that even if you don't even touch the trauma yet, okay, so hold on. How do I preface this? Like, okay, because the 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 trust in people in society is so low as an autistic person, right? You're so rejected, misunderstood. I try to tell people, even the parents I work with my autistic kids and young adults, the process is super slow because by the time they come to me, they work with like five, six people, broken relationships, attachment problems. The trust is so gone that I have to repair so much that by the time we get there, then we're going to work on the sensory. Like I can't even touch it yet. Yeah, we're going to do weird stuff like dance around like what's your favorite fandoms? Tell me more about something so you can info dump. Like I'm just going to teach you a little bit about a treatment or something related to the science behind this. I'm not going to do anything else. We're just going to touch that for a little bit, and then you're going to tell me more about something you like, right? And so I love that you said that everything is individual. And I think that's something that people like, no, you need to give me the step by step. What's the treatment look like? What do I have to do? No, I need to like, so now like your projections of being a professional and being successful to treat someone is coming into this. Like, I have to know what to do. It's like, you know what? I try to give my support for my professional colleagues, you have to go slow. I give you permission to take as much time as you need because it's so sensitive. It's like it's a baby. You're really so tender in what you have to do here. And I love that you know this. Like I can make the connections like you're saying this stuff, like your expertise, like through the roof. I can feel it. You know exactly what you're doing and you can feel it out. It's like you just have to test it out. You don't know. And so that's why these are difficult questions to answer, but you're saying it in a way where I can see what you're trying to say, the sensory, the relationship, and then explaining. So when you said that, whenever people say they want to give me something to do, so like I hurt my foot, right? I've been using this for example for a couple months now. Someone gave me exercises to do, and I straight up said, I haven't done them because you didn't explain the how and the why it would help me. And I'm sorry that I didn't explain that myself. So there was a communication problem here. But now that I'm explaining this, it really is important for me to make the conceptual understanding. Then I can apply to see some final framework bigger for me. Then, if it works, I'm building a comfort towards actually doing it. And so I know other people don't get that. It's like, well, I just gave you the thing to do. Why don't you do it? It's like my level of motivation is not there because I don't understand. That's what I'm
Yes.
seeking.
Also, I like that you mentioned incorporate interest and things like that, and if it's rapport building, that's like 99% of what you're doing and helping the client let go of shame about who they are. Then the 1% can be the conceptualizing and the quote unquote treatment or the
Hmm.
intervention, whatever language
Yeah.
you want to use. And I realize like we're talking about OCD, but I'm going back to autism
Yeah,
conversations.
I
I think,
know.
but the question had asked about treatment for and support for OCD versus PTSD, was it with autistic folks?
And neurotypical.
Oh, and okay, so it was, I mean, those are like four things, right? People who are neurotypical, people who are autistic, people who are OCD, and people with trauma. And someone can be autistic and OCD. You just mentioned something about OCD like thoughts and habits, when you were younger. And I wonder too about, okay, if OCD is a neurotype and there's a certain proclivity people who are OCD have, whether it be anxiety, intelligence, also hyperconnectivity, um, and trying to control, right?
Uh-huh.
Control could be an aspect. Those could be healthy aspects of just their brain and how their brain works. And then the OCD is just those things turned up to 11 with anxiety or trauma or shame or whatever it is, right? So it's kind of like how autism, is called autism spectrum disorder. Sometimes I think about how the DSM, which by the way, not great at all, terrible anecdotes, so
Mm-hmm.
limiting, super biased, unhelpful criteria gatekeeping with all three need to be met, and they're all very stereotypical examples of some autistic people anyway. Those criteria though are talking about an autistic person potentially in distress or struggling. They're
Yes.
not depicting a healthy autistic person, someone who is thriving, and they're not highlighting the value of their differences and how they prefer to do things. They're just judging them as disordered. So I think of someone who's OCD. What does a healthy OCDer look like who's not in
Oh my
distress, who has
gosh. I've never
acceptance?
thought of that. Healthy OCD.
Yeah. Well, because if it's just another brain type, you don't need to change
Yeah.
eligibility.
Because it's
And
always
the
been stigmatized. It's always been seen in a bad way.
right, and the language still calls it as the D in the disorder. So
Yeah.
there's not been a like affirm like saying someone's autistic takes out disorder. Saying someone's ADHD and OCD still has the D in the acronym. So what did they think the ADHD community has vast variable attention stimulus trait?
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, that's like a taking back, coining their own affirming words. And then OCD, I have not seen anything yet, but I might need to do some digging there.
Hmm.
Anyway, there's my tangent. Hopefully, there was some utility in what I just said.
So let's maybe just bounce off the OCD slash PTSD then. Let's say we don't know autistic or neurotypical. What's the thing that would bounce into your head right away about treatment for OCD with PTSD?
Um, Definitely, recognizing how trauma has either impacted self, sense of safety, and what the person's needs are to at least feel connected, because the connectivity in the relationship itself with the provider is going to be the main vessel,
Mm.
right? And then you have all these different trauma-based therapies like EMDR, brain spotting, exposure therapies, what cognitive processing therapies. If those are tailored to the needs of the person who's neurodivergent, right, the OCDer, then they'll be collaborative and they'll be meeting them where they're at, you know? And I don't know, because the trauma could be exacerbating the OCD. What if the OCD has natural traits that are healthy for them, but the trauma has made it so they judge these traits and they try to turn them off even more? Like trauma could be what causes the OCD flare up.
Yes.
So it'd be
Hmm.
unlearning shame and healing from trauma first, and then acceptance of natural OCD traits. And then, you know, there's other things people try. Like some people take medication for anxiety because there's no med for OCD.
Hmm.
Just like there's no med for autism, right? It's like other things like executive function.
I have a personal example. So I was coping very poorly in college for major grief. Um, you said the word flare up. I flared up so much with my obsessive organizing and cleaning. I remember this one day where I just cleaned for 9 hours straight. I was scrubbing the floors in my apartment, the grout on the floor, and I couldn't stop. And I was like crying and panicking, trying to control something. So I chose to clean. That was like my comfort. That's all I'm good at, and all I knew what to do. So I remember that moment is so solidified in my life. Like, yes, unprocessed trauma made that worse, but it was just a natural tendency for me to be organized and want to clean and do these things. But it was never for a while, for like in my youth, I was lucky that it wasn't as extreme as it was when I was younger, right? And so that's a really interesting way to see it because it's so affirming. It's very validating, like, yeah, we're just trying to cope here, and this is what we got,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah. You know, and even the flare up, like, so I think good trauma therapy helps someone see distress as like it's a sign that you can get support and it's okay.
Hmm.
Not that you need to figure it out on your own, you know, not that you need to have complete control. Acceptance at some levels is always helpful, right? For some people. Not when it's like you need to accept that people aren't validating to you and put yourself around them. That's when it's harmful and kind of gaslighting. But
Hmm.
acceptance in some ways, like internal acceptance, is always, I think, going to be helpful for many
Hmm.
people.
Yeah, I'm glad you're talking about this with me. I think a lot of therapists are just gonna like run with whatever we're saying. It's gonna help them a lot. All right.
Maybe someone will be like, I do that, I do that, I do that.
I know it's
That's
gonna be like,
okay.
yep, you're doing everything right. Keep doing it.
Yeah, I think people need validation too, because when you graduate, like you can kind of be on an island. You might seek like other support. You might like seek out a consultation group or CEs, but like you know, when you actually can venture out of graduate school too and like figure things out and learn from experience and come up with your own ideas and be your creative self in some
Hmm.
ways.
Hmm.
I mean, it's funny I'm saying that because earlier I was like, oh, I don't know how to be creative. That's when
Hmm.
you can flourish because like then you're actually yourself finally, and then you're actually like able to come from like a more relaxed, confident place and use your own beliefs, right, to help people. And like I mean there's et cetera, et cetera. There's so many things that can flow from that. So but I
Hmm.
hope people are finding some things validating.
Yes, thank you. Oh, I hope so too. We're going to go into the next question. I've been hearing so much about Pure O these days. Would love to know more about how that presents. So, what is it, anyways? What is Pure O?
It's obsessions about something one either cannot control or they can't prove definitively, to the point where if they can't prove it, they will continue to ruminate on it and it will cause greater and greater distress. And then they may also try to come up with mental compulsions of how to get rid of it. So there's no like physical, behavioral, outward behavior one does to
Okay.
get rid of the thinking. It would just all be internal.
Is that the same as being delusional?
Um, no, because you don't believe what's going on. Usually it's an ego dystonic thought. It's like, I have this thought, it's so incongruent with who I am, or it's something I just don't want to experience, but I can't stop it happening.
Oh,
Whereas delusional might be like, this is happening a lot and I totally believe it. Like
okay.
you, if you're delusional, you wouldn't be bothered by it.
Mm, okay. So there's
So that's puro.
like slash. Okay, got it. Got it. So if that's happening, what's an example of thought that someone would have that's pure?
Now I'll tell you my personal experience. So when I was in graduate school, I was still understanding a lot about my sexuality, and there were some things that were happening interpersonally in my life that were already causing me distress. And something major happened. Actually, it wasn't major, it was like ongoing. And it felt like boundaries were being crossed in my life. So like people were upsetting me. This was
Mm.
in graduate school too, which by the way, if you can, I mean, like graduate school is already extremely anxiety inducing and stressful. And I wasn't even thinking about that. I wasn't thinking like, oh, I'm paying a bunch of money to do work and not making any money and having to do a crap ton of homework and assignments and being graded all the time, walking on eggshells at the campus. And it's bad time. I had a lot of ego dystonic thoughts about questioning my sexuality, which at some level it was like, I know my sexuality. Like I've known my sexuality and been comfortable with that for like, how old was I? 24 years. Well,
Mm-hmm.
maybe not since I was a baby, but 20 plus years maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as far as I can remember. But then these thoughts came up. And so I was so like worried that like, oh, I don't know my sexuality. I don't know it. I couldn't prove it. It was like, am I this? Am I that? I can't prove it. How do you prove if you are?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Can you prove your sexuality? No, it is an identity. It is who you are. It is an integral part of yourself. And you don't need to prove that to anybody, too. That's what's also ironic.
Mm-hmm.
But the obsession was there because I couldn't prove something. And so, you know, eventually it did form into asking people in my life about it. Like, have you ever thought about this for me? Which could be considered a compulsion, right? It's a check-in.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of conflated it with a little bit of like, if I was questioning it, this could be a healthy way of doing that. But it also just felt so ego dystonic and anxiety inducing that I was like, how do I turn these thoughts off? And trying to turn the thoughts off made my life hell. It was like, oh my God, like crying. I need to stop this. I can't stop this. And then I'll fast forward to like what helped is definitely Eckhart Tolle's book, Power of Now. Just the an act, I guess, the philosophy and act and Eckhart Tolle combining are like, you are not your thoughts. And a thought is no threat to you and who you are actually as a person. So it's okay to accept your thoughts and sit with your pain, even if your pain is very challenging in the
Mm-hmm.
moment. And that, you know, thoughts didn't go away right away, but just practicing that and embracing internal thoughts that I, one, will never have control over, and two, actually pose no threat to who I am as a person and my safety. And three, no one that I told, you know, I was questioning in my life was judging me. That helped too. It was nice to have someone validating and people are like, I still love you. It's okay. Um, that all amounted to, I'm okay. And I can live with my mind how it is. So there you go. That's my experience. And that may give a good example of what pure O can look like. Trying to control ego dystonic thoughts because you think they're true or that you need to turn them off.
What would you say to a therapist who's just, they might not have the niche in OCD, and you know what, someone, their client trusts them so much, they start presenting and sharing, disclosing the stuff, and it's like, nope, I don't want any other therapist to work with me. I want you. How would you even approach encouraging a therapist to work with this? Because it is a unique experience.
It is. The question is, how would I encourage a therapist to like help someone who's dealing with pure O?
Yes.
Get a good sense of, well, first build a relationship. Again, it's that like
Mm-hmm.
build your connection, be a safe person, establish like a good understanding of what shows up for this person, maybe why their thoughts might be there too. Like the thoughts could signify an actual thing they're dealing with, or they could just be completely unrelated, right? So see if there's meaning. What meaning does the person make out of their thoughts?
Mm-hmm.
Get a good sense of who the person is, like what they care about in their life, and then how they relate with their mind. And
So you're
now,
just
and now
mapping out everything. That's
map
it.
out everything. I also like to ask people, what's your relationship with yourself and then your mind? And do you identify as your mind? Like, are you your mind? Or is mind a separate entity than you, right?
Mm-mm.
Are you the
Yes.
watcher?
Yes.
And that helps a lot with OCD because if you're identified with mind, you're going to create a ton of suffering, right? You're going to, every time you have a negative thought, every time you make a mistake and you appraise it negatively, or if somebody else says something negative about you or has a thought negative about you, it's going to be devastating to you because you identify with it.
Mm-mm.
So I like to explore that. Like, what's your relationship with your mind? Do you identify it? That's my own personal philosophy and belief.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's helped me in my life is de-identifying from my mind, which is very acty.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, what are your modalities anyways?
I don't know.
Sorry, the mic.
I I don't even know. No, it wasn't loud at all. You're good. You have a
Okay,
good
good.
mic. It,
Oh,
it like it keeps levels even.
okay, thanks.
Um, I use ACT philosophy a lot. I'm definitely client centered. I'm humanistic, and I feel like I'm just neurodivergent affirming. Like that's not
Mm,
official manualized or anything, but
okay.
neurotypes don't change people, help them accept themselves where they are. And know what kind of supports they need. Is it sensory stuff? Is it executive function stuff? Like,
Mm,
I'm not trying to like get people to, change themselves to be better, because I feel like that's just shame. But I
mm.
do want people to know what can help for their support and give them the option of getting it if they think they need it or could use it.
Dude, what do we name this? Just human.
Right. That's why, and I was trained on how to do DBT, CBT, and I was never trained in ACT, but I liked it so much that for my third year in grad school, I was just like, I'm going to do this. Like,
Hmm,
this is nice.
right on. And I love that you threw that out because I always want to encourage people to expand. Every time people look on like, I want a CBT therapist. Like, no, you don't. You want more than that.
Try out anything. Like, see who the therapist is as a person, and then work backward. Like, what's their modality, but who are
Mm,
they first as a person?
mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
how do they show themselves online or talk to you?
Yeah. It's the ultimate intervention is you as a person, your wholeness. Yeah.
A million
Yeah.
bajillion percent, like that. That is the whole of it, which
Mhm.
which can feel daunting. It's like, oh my God, my self-care, and I got to be put together, all that stuff, the pressure of it. But like, if that's what it boils down to, of just take care of yourself first and
Mhm.
foremost, like, you're going to help people by doing that. It's a
Yeah.
nice
Hmm.
dual process.
Yes. Mm. Here's a simple question. Trauma or OCD? Mhm.
Um, I'll take trauma for 500. Wait, that's a Jeopardy joke. What's the,
I guess
it's
how to
saying,
differentiate between trauma or OCD.
oh, I see.
Hmm.
Grad school would say, what's the onset of symptoms? So did OCD traits show up well before trauma happened?
So
Some
timeline, right?
timeline.
Timeline.
But what they could be so inextricably linked to, like we just said, if OCD is a natural brain type, you've always been quote unquote OCD.
Yep. Yep.
If trauma exacerbates and flares things up, it's both.
Hmm.
You have to really know how trauma looks like: complex trauma, event-based trauma, identity trauma, relationship trauma. Because there's so many different types of OCD too, right? Like, there's like sexual OCD, there's harm OCD, there's relationship, like there's so many different subtypes. I just wonder if this is how people who are OCD's brains work, and then their trauma is related to whatever form the OCD is latched onto in some way.
Oh, so this is like a chicken egg thing, right?
Yeah.
Trauma, OCD. Okay, let's pretend that we're teaching bachelor's level psych students.
Oh God.
Okay.
Okay.
It's not even like grad school yet. So it's the basics. It's 101. And we want to we're coming in for a panel. These young learners are excited. They want to maybe go into the field and they want to learn more. They're like, what the heck is trauma? What the heck is OCD? So what would be the simple description for you to give them?
Do I have to explain it through the confines of what the DSM says?
No, no, no.
Um, Trauma is an event or multiple events that cause a negative perception of self and others, and strongly impacts how your nervous system responds to environmental cues and your sense of self. And then OCD is your brain type, which typically involves repeated thought processes,
Mhm.
typically higher levels of linking things, which could be correlated with intelligence, and anxiety levels that can worsen the rumination and obsessive thinking.
Okay, so this is actually something interesting you said. Trauma is really linked to nervous system dysregulation, right? And I think that
Yes.
would probably be the light bulb for people like, okay, body, work with the body somehow. Yes.
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 Yes. Yeah, because your brain is what's happened, what's you can't control your autonomic nervous system. You can't control how your neuroception, right? Your brain's in reaction to outward triggers and cues, environment stuff. You can't control that response,
Mm-hmm.
but if you're
Mm-hmm.
aware of it, you can work with it.
But that's kind of the still. It's been around for a while. We've had so much more affirming and systemic integrative type of trauma care floating around, amazing workshops, a lot of good people writing books. But I have a feeling in education, people still think trauma is only in my head. So
Mm.
obviously, I'm just going to work on my thoughts. No?
Yeah, I could see that. Um, the environment stuff, I think, would only be a focus typically if it's like trauma related to like an event or a person of like if there's avoidance, right? And that is, you see that on trauma is the avoidance piece.
Yeah.
Same thing in OCD. They're doing ritualized behavior to avoid thinking or anxiety. So there's overlap there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I didn't learn anything about somatic body related approaches in graduate school. There
Nope.
was no discussion
Nope.
of that at all. But a lot of therapists are doing that
Yeah.
now,
Yeah. Yeah. So we're gonna
which
throw
is
out the
great.
word somatic. Have trauma, we need to make sure the brain and body are cared for. Um, so OCD, can it cause trauma?
I think you could construe the relationship you have with your unwanted thoughts as traumatic if you think that they pose a threat to you and that because of your compulsions, like it's a layered question. If I think that something's wrong with me because of the way these thoughts are happening in my anxiety, I have a continually negative relationship with myself and my mind growing, which could be trauma because
Mm-hmm.
there could be a negative loop. If someone's judged me for the way I think or the way I act and has shamed me for it in some way, that's
Mm-hmm.
also trauma. So trauma can be trauma, trauma related experiences, which could lead to avoidance and more anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely could be linked with OCD in that way.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go back to what we've been saying. It's a human bond, human repair, like relationship. That's the biggest thing. Like you can't challenge really the reality outside of what they're doing, confirming that this is a struggle, but the microcosm of the relationship is repairing so much just because you see them as they are. You're exploring, asking questions, naming things, teaching them, terminology. That's going to weigh so much more. And it's powerful when they have that trust with you as the helper, right? Mm.
Well, what about co-regulation? Like you're a
Yep.
safe person whose nervous system could be regulated in the presence of them, maybe not feeling as regulated. And so that mirroring
Yes.
is helpful for them to feel more, calm and collected and connected.
And I want to name the process again. It's co-regulation because a lot of people don't want to know what's happening in therapy. They just like it's magic.
Yeah, right. I clients say that they're like, I just want to come in here. I don't need to know the basis. Maybe not so much nowadays with my niche, but in the past, yes. When I was a
Mhm.
generalist or being trained as such.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's neat to always know what's going on, like kind of narrating, like what's happening right now. We're co-regulating. Do you see this? Isn't that neat? Yeah.
I had a therapist. Yeah, I don't think I've ever had a therapist explain some things to me like that. I've had them maybe offer ideas. Um, but I had one therapist who was like hinting at shame a lot and like
Mm.
gave me a book to read. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And I guess that was like a breadcrumb of like, hey, look at shame and how it's showing up for you. And that could be helpful. Um, I had to
Mm.
make that sense, right? And so it depends on the client too. Like if they think that if
Yeah.
you think the client can make sense out of that in that way, let
Hmm.
them. PDA autistic folks, like the more directive you try to be with incepting ideas or forcing them to think about something a certain way or even just do something or answer a question the way you want them to, like you're going to get so much pushback that I feel
Yeah.
like you need to layer breadcrumbs and just be yourself and show what you naturally believe in without ever forcing something.
Oh, so side note on PDA stuff, like my PDA clients like working with me because they're like, you're just fun. You're not like an adult who's pushing me to do things.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, I know. Why would I want to do that?
And that's probably you in other contexts too. Like that's just who you are. You don't,
And
I've
they
known
can
you
see
outside.
that, right? That authentic, like, I don't feel nervous around a PDA kid or young adults. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, you got forced to be with me, so let's just hang out until you trust me. I can't force
Yes.
you to do anything, you know?
Right. Right. No, and like putting ourselves in the client's shoes, would you want to be the recipient of that anyway? Like, I don't, that's something I think providers can do is like put yourself in your client's shoes while you're speaking to them. Like, does this sound, is it being delivered in a way, does it has a philosophy that
Mm,
you would latch onto that you think would help you?
yeah,
If you don't
yeah.
believe in it, don't sell it, you know?
Big question. Yeah.
Yeah. And no one's going to teach you to do that in graduate school. They're going to
Nope.
teach you this is what sells because we have evidence-based research backing it with lots of grants. And yeah,
Ew.
I'm not going to get cynical right now.
That's a ew.
Well, yeah, it is you. I just, I could go on a long tirade about that, but yeah. Anyway, hopefully that answers the question.
It does. Back to OCD.
I don't even remember the question, but it was a good question. Thank you for whoever asked that.
Here's another one from a therapist. I'd be interested in their take on how to best work with intrusive thoughts.
Well, if you've been listening, we have alluded to a lot of that, like one
Yeah.
being acceptance is the key. So a thought is intrusive because it is unwanted.
Okay.
But if a thought is unwanted, it does not mean it is unacceptable, and it does not mean it has to make any sense out of who you are as a person.
Hmm.
So if I have unwanted thoughts about hurting people in my life, I can remember that I care about people, right? But if I'm using that idea of, oh, I'm a good person, I care about people, and I'm trying to drill that into my head to replace the intrusive thought or to deny it,
I
that
see.
is not acceptance. That is pushing the thought away, and that is fighting with it. And when you fight with it, it gets stronger. If you give it negative energy, it gets stronger, right? So
Hmm.
acceptance means sometimes taking a neutral stance, right? So what an act therapist would be like, try saying, these are just thoughts, my mind is wandering,
Hmm.
here's my mind again, right? I think Russ Harris likes to make fun of the, not make fun of it, make fun out of the thought, like that's a funny thought, or say the thought in like SpongeBob's voice or a weird character's voice to make it less real.
Mm-mm.
um to just show you like it's just a sound in your mind, right? That's taken on meaning that you think is real about you, or that something you want to do. So practice acceptance, practice ungluing yourself from it.
That's very Buddhist.
Oh, 100% Buddhist.
So let's say, I mean, I understand what you're saying because my whole thing is about acceptance, neurodivergent stuff, like accepting everything. So, and then it's the paradox always, right? You accept the hold becomes loose, right? So
Yes.
how do I, because I know some people might be listening like, well, I want to work on acceptance. And you just say that. It sounds so easy. What the heck do I even do to build acceptance? I don't get it.
That's a really good point. First thing is I would think about talking with people about what you're experiencing, because by telling somebody, you've accepted it in yourself.
Okay.
And then also, if the other person is not rejecting you and just simply hearing you, it reinforces that you are acceptable, including this thought that you had, right? Journaling, empty chair exercise with yourself, parts work, IFS, right? IFS asks you to look at different parts of yourself and integrate them. So the intrusive thinking can be another part.
Love it.
Like, yeah, right. So there's narrative work there too. I guess just talking about these things and exploring, that's something I'd ask a client too, is like, what does acceptance look like?
Good
Like, does acceptance
question.
mean you sit with it? Does it mean you hug it? Does it mean you join with it? Does it mean you laugh with it? Does it mean you just simply look at it?
Hmm,
Right? If you weren't, does it mean you write about it? Like, let the
right.
client define what acceptance looks like.
Okay. So I'm also going to jump and add one more thing to this part because some people may not accept themselves at all, where this is just the hardest work ever. It's like, you're being so kind and gentle to me, I'm going to reject it. And I think, so this is going to happen. The intrusive thoughts or whatever the symptoms are going to increase because they're going to double down like, no, you're changing my identity. You're being too nice to me. I hate myself, like this is not right. So for me, I would name the process, but like, I don't know how the people would work because I don't want it to like, no, don't tell me the process. It's supposed to be magical.
Right. Yeah. Some people may just want to like get to it quickly. So they're like, I don't need to know why.
Hmm.
Or they might think knowing why somehow would mean it doesn't work.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. What you said magical. Um, Sometimes I've seen people who are at wit's end with something, and if they're at wit's end and this is a posited solution, they're just willing to try it no matter what.
Okay.
And sometimes that can be enough because it's like I was willing to say what you gave me could have been helpful and I trusted it and it didn't hurt me trusting it at least, right? So this is not to say like distress is a good thing and we should all embrace being distressed all the time, because if someone is like in autistic burnout or they've been through trauma, or they're just in a really toxic living situation, or work's terrible, or schools are
Hmm.
bullies and homework crap. I hate homework. Um, that's all extremely dysregulating and exhausting emotionally. And just saying, like, please just accept this, right,
Mm.
is not helpful.
Yeah.
If there can be more done and changed and advocated for and adjusted right in the person's life. So um, I think it does work in the sense of acceptance of self and mind.
Hmm.
But then if there's a lot of these other things paired with it, you got to work with those things simultaneously. You can't just be like, I'm going to help you accept all of the distress internally,
Mm.
and somehow think that it's okay to keep going through some of the stuff. That's just not good. Like, you
Yeah.
don't need that.
I already know you're like the best therapist out there, man. You're one of the best. Too bad you're always full. Like I was trying to throw people at you, like, nope, you're full, you're full, you're full, you're always
I
full.
can't. I just, I can't work anymore. I'm exhausted,
No,
like,
I
if
get
you
it.
how many people can you really like pay
I
attention
know.
to for an
I
hour?
just want
I'm
to
hiring someone. I'm hiring a postdoc,
can't wait. Can't wait to share when
She
that
needs
happens.
she'll be getting the training in neurodiversion affirming therapy, and she's worked with me before. She's a good human being.
Love it.
She'll want
Awesome.
to work with young adults and Asian Americans. So that will
Oh,
be like a big focus for her as the
I
intersection.
I would like to send a couple people her way to network with too, then.
Oh, very cool. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Last question. This is from an individual. Um, best evidence probiotics for OCD or related disorders, or more broadly, how might the gut-brain axis be implicated into OCD? Are there any promising treatments? So that's the first part.
God, I know hardly anything about gut-brain axis and
Oh.
probiotics. I would say I know that gut health is extremely important and linked to mental health stuff, and I imagine, like, what would I even add to this that would not be stepping outside my bounds of what I actually know.
Mhm.
GI issues can be caused by anxiety, or they can cause anxiety. It's a chicken or egg thing, and
Mhm.
anxiety being a common, denominator for OCD. OCD is typically anxiety
Yes.
impacting thinking and behavior, right? That's why medication for OCD is simply medication for anxiety. Um, or executive function, because then you get more cognitive control sometimes, right, which helps you sort through your thoughts more easily and maybe even practice acceptance. But you know you might even know more about this stuff than me. I just
Oh no, I
you know
don't.
you don't. Yeah, I don't.
Mm-mm.
I'm not. I would say you could get a dietitian or nutritionist who's worked with OCDers and have
That
that
is
whole mental
so
health stuff.
interesting. And that's the thing I think is important too. When we talk about affirming care, it's us networking with as many types of professionals as possible. Cause like I don't know about the gut, like someone else will, you know? Yeah.
Yes.
So that means we're missing something. Cause I found so many OTs now, because that's a big boom right now in neurodivergent care. We got to find more health, like nutritional stuff too.
Maybe there's a
Mm.
nutritionist or a dietitian in the geek therapy group. I mean, it's a stretch, but maybe there is.
Oh yeah, there's like what, 10,000 people in that group. We should
Yeah,
ask.
we
I,
should
I
ask.
should,
Yeah.
yeah, I should ask that question. Next question. Sorry, we tried. We'll try and find someone. I think I'll remember that because I said that here. I'll try and find someone in the geek therapy group. So thoughts on breakthrough therapies regarding OCD and related disorders, trichotillomania, which I thankfully no longer struggle with, but from the time they were a kid for about 12 in the age of AI. Does that make sense? Like breakthrough, um,
Breakthrough
are,
treatments just being newer ones.
yeah, I think so.
I'd want to know what the newer ones they're alluding to are. I think also trichotillomania is interesting because I think it's under the OCD blanket, but I've seen autistic people in distress engage in trick behaviors, which are it's stimming, but it's also a little bit of like possible self-harm.
Yeah.
And it's a BFBR, body focused repetitive BFRB, sorry, body focused repetitive behavior. It if it falls under volitional control and it's not compulsive, then it's more of a stim, right? But if it's OCD related, it's probably OCD, not just trick.
Hmm.
Sometimes I think people have a hard time catching their thinking, so they can't define what the obsession looks like, but they know what the compulsion or the picking looks like. So an OCDer who has hair pulling or skin picking as a behavior to reduce anxiety that isn't able to catch the thoughts as well or document them as such might be labeled as just trick rather than OCD.
I'm being sad right now because I've been skin picking since I was like 5 years old. I hate it. I like nibble on my fingers when I'm really nervous, but I don't have any thoughts. Is it
You know, any thoughts?
so? This is my thing though. I don't have thoughts. It's empty.
Mm-hmm.
So like, what
It,
do I do with that? This is even not even part of the question. Like, what do you do with people who don't have thoughts? They're just anxious.
um, just hear them out because you
No,
can
no, no
articulate
thoughts.
very well. You communicate verbally with me, right? You're not using a speaking
Yeah,
device
yeah.
or ASL, right? Or non-speaking. So however you're communicating, I can ascertain how things might show up for you by simply hearing you and then possibly tying together what you've said, saying it back to you and seeing if that's what makes sense. So you can package it, I can repackage it. You can tell me if that package feels good or feels helpful.
Packages.
Package, yeah. Gift, I don't know. It's the only one that came to mind. It's not
Okay.
like, is it bow tied? Yeah, I don't.
Mm.
But that, you know, people without thoughts, yeah. Uh, that sounds peaceful in some ways. But
I know. Yeah, it's easier for me to meditate because
yeah,
there's nothing in here. But so with the hair pulling itself, let's say we're just looking at that.
yeah.
What are some common things that people have looked up? Like, this is a treatment. It doesn't have to be breakthrough, but like, this is just really works, you know?
I've seen medication,
Okay.
you know, for anxiety and executive function. I've seen
Oh.
what else? I mean, for therapy, there's the ERP, exposure and response prevention. So sit with the urge and choose something differently. Which at that point you're saying basically philosophically you're saying that trick is just simply a habit you've developed in response to stress, which it could be.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean there could be ancestral roots in there too. Like people could have ancestors who engaged in certain repetitive behaviors that you have somehow picked up in your DNA, right? In
Hmm.
your habitual responses to things.
Yeah.
And also I'd look at stims. So like, do you have stims of other in response to other things? Like I used to bite my nails a lot. It was when I was really bored, but I think I was also shaming myself thinking I shouldn't be watching TV. I should be working. So there's a lot of shame involved with that for me.
Hmm.
Um, so I'd look at what are the underpinnings there? Like, is it an emotion? Probably. And then is it a habit? Most likely. Um, is it the actual, but is it the thing you need to stop though? Is it all about skin picking or is it something underneath it? So you said it's not thoughts. Is it feelings? Like, um, do you need to change the picking too? That's another thing. It's like, are you embarrassed by it? Does it make you a bad person for doing it? Do others judge you for it? Like, if others judge you for it, well, I'm sorry, but that's their own shit. That's not you. If you judge yourself, it's something you could learn to accept or you know be okay with in some ways. Um, if it's something that's causing you physical pain and health problems, then it's like okay, I understand why you want to change it.
Hmm.
Um, I think shame. I always talk about shame because I think shame like keeps people stuck in some things. It doesn't help them explore in a very curious and open way the
Hmm.
alternatives. It keeps
Yeah.
them stuck because they go, I need to stop because I'm ashamed of this. And because I'm ashamed of this, I can't stop.
Ugh, just stuck.
Just stuck. Yeah.
Hmm.
And executive function. What else could I do? This is accessible. This is easy for me right now. It's in the moment. It's predictable. So
Hmm.
um, I think just normalizing why people do these things too can help them let go of shame. And then some of the other things we just talked about can be helpful.
I want to highlight what you just said because it sounds so simple, but it's not. Like just having someone believe that you accept them to really be curious and explore. I think some people feel like, no, I'm paying you. You're just being kind because you want my money, right? Or your insurance is going to pay you. It's like, I don't like, so that trust is so important. Like you just say things again, it's so softly and like, I can tell you're so compassionate and you very much understand the situation. It's like, there's no level of hubris that comes from you. Like I sometimes, sorry, other people checking yourselves, like other professionals, some of you are very proud of your degrees and your aura is just like, ew. You are not university affirming because you're not going to work with PDAers because we don't like authority. Sorry. But anyway,
That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah. PDAs do not like authority.
yeah, I don't like it. And so it's
I don't
this,
like it either.
maybe you're PDAer. So like the essence is like, again, I want to know your story. I don't know it. You got to tell me. We can't figure stuff out unless you tell me. And so like, it's this weird thing about the shame. It's like, I feel like I'm thinking of like chains. You're being chained. You're imprisoned by the shame, and then you're slowly unraveling it, like making it looser for them to kind of shake themselves out of it. It's like feel a little bit more free, And that I know it's like again, it's the magic of just having someone really care, but you're doing it intentionally with so much competency in the background.
Yes. And it doesn't feel like you're doing it sometimes too. I think this is a really important thing you said though about money. I think about this a lot. It's like I have been conditioned in this profession to work more for less,
Mm,
especially with insurance, because the social justice piece of access to care and equity, right?
yeah.
Means that we want to help as many people as we can. I get to define what I can and can't do, right? Like what is feasible for me energy wise and time wise. But then the money piece is interesting to me because, yes, we do get paid good money for this work. It is hard work.
Mm,
I say that to first denote that as a fact. This is hard work. This is not easy work. This is extremely taxing work, right? And it makes a good amount of money. And so I want to believe that what I'm doing is worth the money I get paid for,
mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
I'd
Yeah.
hope other people would too. But then I think it is worth the money too because somebody else can define that worth. You set your rate, you see who shows up.
Mm,
Everyone will define, for instance, for me, what therapy means to them. Okay. And then they'll tell me if it's helpful or not.
mm-hmm.
And I'll check in explicitly. But I think about that comment in terms of other professions too. Everyone out there in terms like helping profession or not, you have a service and you have people who pay money for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is a business of helping people, which adds another layer,
Yeah.
right, of responsibility and possible, dynamics. But if you were, for instance, let's say, what's another like okay, I had a plumber come over and help me with my garbage disposal, and I know how much that piece costs, and I know actually how to replace it because I watched a YouTube video. I don't have the executive function, nor the patience, nor the time,
Mm-hmm.
nor the energy. So I hired this person. It ended up probably costing me an extra $450. That's a lot of money, but I deemed it as worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I know, I mean, I could tell the utility behind what was going on too. I don't think this person thought anything about, oh, this fee is not acceptable.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? Because there's not that, again, ever since graduate school and in psychology, and I think even just like people in helping professions ourselves, we want to help people and we're very cautious about like, this is a rant. I'm ranting, but
I
we're
know you are.
cautious about, and sorry if I'm taking, I want you to take up space too. I think about that a lot. I think about how much I'm charging. I have some people say you should charge way more. And I'm
Mhm.
like, I could. I don't need to because I'm making good money, but I could. So it's good to know that you think that and I agree.
Yeah.
And then I have another part of me that says some people need sliding scale and they seem like they can't afford it. So you're going to get a mixture of all of that. And I
Mhm.
think if you're glued to one of those things, you're going to end up hurting yourself somehow financially or emotionally.
Yes. So that was like the professional side of you talking about.
Oh, that was professional? Okay, thank you.
No, I think it's like as helpers, we get stuck with this rate thing. It's like, no, we're not good enough, or we're no, we I have to do more like to earn this. Like if
Yeah.
you help your people and you niche well, you develop this sense of competencies, you're learning all the time, you admit when you need to grow, it kind of evens out over time. Like you feel like, yes, this fits about right, that's just the thing. I think we sometimes, again, it's like, no, we can't talk about money. Why are we talking about money? Because it's life and you have to.
You live in America if you're doing therapy here. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
you're licensed, so you have to survive, and that's and if you want, like you said earlier, if you have to take care of yourself, you need money to do that
Mhm.
sometimes, if not most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Go back
Like
to
to go get boba and drive out somewhere
Yep.
and have the gas for
We should do that soon. But back to
it.
OCD. So I just want to wrap up with this last question, just to make sure that this person feels like we answered well enough. Um, would you do like behavioral therapy for these traits related to OCD? Like the physical things, the manifestations, or even the thought, would you do that? Or is that like, no, that's too close to ABA?
Um, you mean behavioral therapy, like have them do a physical thing to help with
Yeah,
what's going on
yeah.
internally? Only if the client defined it as something they thought was helpful, and only if I heard their definition of why they thought it was helpful wasn't extremely ableist and something that was
Okay.
most likely enforced upon
Hmm.
them. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
As long as it's not coming from a place of shame where I need to be different to be accepted, then okay. Like if it's like a OCD that's causing them to avoid doing something physically, and they're like, I want to do this for my health. And I'm like, beautiful. You're doing
Hmm.
this out of self-love. No one else is telling you to do this. Then
Love it.
let's try it.
Hmm.
That's a very broad answer, but
It is.
client must define, and it must come from a place of self-compassion and not ableism.
What if, now I'm just like jumping, what if you think they're saying stuff just to make you happy as a therapist? Like they know how to pass therapy by saying the positive things. Like I'm doing this for to love myself, I'm doing this to grow, but you kind of have a feeling, or you can't tell. Like it's like that sounds like a textbook answer. I'm not sure, you know.
I will always trust what the client says
Hmm.
100% all of the time because they want me to. I'm guessing people want to be trusted and feel trustworthy. And I can see that going a few ways in a useful way. So the first one would be fake it till you make it. What if they're
Okay,
actually
okay,
trying to achieve that?
okay, got it.
The second one would be why would I need to be paranoid or worried the client's lying? That's so much extra layers of work for me. And no offense, but I'm not in this to mind read. I'm in this to help.
Hmm.
Um, that could be the only way the client thinks they're acceptable too, is they put on a mask. And if there's some kind of small crack that falls through that, I can comment on it and maybe they'll open up more, maybe they won't. Like
Okay, got it.
I'm
So
not
this
in the business to control anybody. So
Okay, so this is where
let's
our
see.
style is a little bit different because I'm a coach, and so I get to have fun. If you're my client, you're watching right now, I love calling you out on your bullshit when you say you're going to do something, and then we start laughing because you know you're not going to do it.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, because you know for them,
Yeah.
they're saying they're doing it, they're going to do it. But if the executive function challenges are there, maybe you're calling out, oh, you're saying that because maybe you think that's what you should say.
Yes. It's like, so I know you're telling me this. I already know you're not going to do it.
Right. And that could even be conditioned. They've been conditioned to say, I need to do this and I'm going to appease. That could be a
Mm,
PDA fawn.
mm.
I'm gonna tell you I'm gonna do this just to get you off my back, right?
Right.
So like that's a very compassionate, challenging of it. But the example you gave me was like someone who's like pathologically lying to me to like, I don't know, like what the hell is I like a Patrick Bateman or something? Like someone who's like Bateman, go to therapy. Okay, I'm just murdering people on the side. Like
Talking
I'm
about
happy.
dance music and
Yeah, right. You like Huey Lewis in the news. That movie's so messed up. That movie is just it's gross. A homeless person is murdered in the first like 3 minutes of that movie. It is terrible. That is a terrible movie. But
great
some of the
movie.
parts are ridiculous.
Great movie.
Yeah, great movie, great movie. Was that all the questions? Did we get
It
through all of them?
was. We did.
Amazing timing.
Yeah. I know you have things to do, right?
I've gotten emails and phone calls since we've been talking, and I'm tired.
Oh, oh my goodness. Well, I
No, it's
appreciate
fine.
your time so much and your expertise. Like, I just love talking to you. It's always chill, very nice, like topics that we can just. I'm gonna edit the video and I always highlight the things that I think are important. I like doing that. So a lot of things. Hmm.
Thanks for having me. It was fun chatting with you again, and like, yeah, this is super great. Like, thanks for giving my voice and of course your voice to like a platform for people to listen to. Like, that's really awesome.
Yeah, the 20 people that watch me, they're gonna love it. So
Shout
when
outs to the 20 people watching.
if you were open, if you had like a slot for like one or two people, where could people find you?
drjonfled.com, drjonfled.com.
Okay, and maybe in
That's
the
me.
future you'll be streaming.
Yes, that would be cool. Like, I need to figure out how to do that ethically. Although, like, I would just be myself
Mhm.
because that's who I am at my practice. So it's like, I'm not doing therapy on the stream. So
No,
honestly, I'd probably just be myself and some of this philosophy would probably just come out naturally. But other than that, I would just be being myself. I actually wouldn't be trying to sell anything. I'd
nope.
probably just be like this right now.
Mhm.
So we'll see. It's just the time and I need to know how to set it up.
I told you I'd show you. Don't worry about it.
I know. I feel like I'm like coyly asking for the help without asking for it directly. So thank you.
No
Thank you.
problem. I like sharing information. That's how I show care. So it's my love language.
I will gladly accept the help.
Okay, awesome.
Thanks for
So,
your time.
of course. And again, give this video a like. Please share it in the communities you think might be helpful. It would really help the algorithm to boost this channel because no one's ever watching it anymore. Please help me. Just share,
Please
please.
watch.
Thank
Please watch.
you. All right, see you in the next video, guys.